Death Club.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here, and today I'm talking to you about the story between a dumb prefect and a high school girl with an inappropriate skirt length. And talk about a goddamn title. Very isekai meme-like. So very obvious off the jump, you can tell what kind of manga this is. It's a slice of life series. It just has those titles where it explains exactly what the main premise is. This is written and drawn by Takuma Yokota, which, funny enough, this is the same person that did Sento Hakai Gakken Dangerous. That is the very first manga I reviewed on this podcast. This is being published in Shonen Serious, same magazine that has Yozakura Quartet, Opossums, a couple other mangas I've read, and mainly like some other side stuff. Like there's the Blam manga version for the movie that came out, one of the Attack on Titan spinoffs, and a bunch of other stuff. This started in March of 2019, currently has 63 chapters, but I've only read 57. I feel like I don't need to catch up to talk about what I want to say. So let's go ahead and jump in. This stars our two main characters, Poemu and Togo Sakura Daimon. Their names perfectly represent their characters. Poemu is more of a gyaru, right, as far as the flashy side of things. She has her dyed hair. She wants to wear cute clothes. Togo Sakura Daimon is a prefect. He's super strict. He's also one of those characters that just speaks his mind, has no filter. In the very first page, they're already butting heads because her skirt is just a couple inches too short, which is a very popular trope. And he's just talking about, like, that's inappropriate. What are guys gonna think? This, and that. She's like, oh, why are you even mentioning that? He's like, well, I'm a guy, and I think that, you know, that's kind of hot or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So they get into this big fight. And on this day, Poemu, unfortunately, is struggling with her grades, so she has to take supplementary classes after school. And who else is there but Sakura Daimon? Because even though he's, you know, an S-tier prefect, his grades are struggling a little bit, so he has to be here every now and then. They're the only two in this class, so they eventually have to talk to each other. And Poemu kind of realizes, you know what, this guy, he's pretty cool. He's not as a hard ass as I thought he was. And Togo, being Togo, just decides like, oh yeah, I think you're a great person, blah, blah, blah. Just, you know, keep the rules in check. Don't make that skirt a little too long, you know. So it always, for the most part, ends with them arguing about something like that. But she always has that smile at the end, like, yeah, he's not really a bad guy. He's just a little thick-headed. And with it being a slice of life, it's just a day-to-day basis of school and them bumping into each other, and eventually Poemu catches feelings and is trying to now figure out, like, well, I like him, but how am I supposed to date a guy who thinks even relationships, holding hands, is all inappropriate? There's no way this is going to happen. And it's really just them getting closer. We eventually meet Poemu's friends, other people on the student council that are also very interesting characters. The health committee guy is a delinquent, he's an ex-delinquent, but he still has the attitude. And then there's the librarian, who's like this super pretty boy who just loves quoting books. But as soon as you see him outside of a library or wherever there's no books, he is the shriveled up gerbil looking man that says, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to anybody. And of course, the president and vice president of the student council are seniors, and they're just a league of their own. They're great too. Poemu's friends, really good supporting cast. It's kind of what you would expect. There's the level-headed one, and there's the smaller one who is very loud and expressive. I think that's like kind of like the classic trio for a female main characters group. You know, that way there's always a balance, essentially. This series, it's pretty fun. I definitely recommend it. For the most part, there's a lot of wacky stuff going on. Yokota here does a really great job with his art. A little different from what he did in Gakken Dangerous, which I think is one of his more early works. But here, everything is bold. A lot of thick lines, hard lines for the shading, pops into your face, and the expressions on every character is really good. And it kind of really just stands out from like typical slice of life manga art, because most of it is very similar. A Married Couple but Part-Time Lovers, the last thing I read before the hiatus, that's like the very generic rom-com slice of life art. And here it's like, no. Let's stand out. And it's fun because eventually we do see other characters like Poemu and Togo's parents, specifically their fathers, which is one of my favorite parts of the series. All I have to say is Togo's dad basically looks like Kazuya, and Poemo's dad used to do rap battles when he was young and was in a hip-hop group. That is so awesome. And seeing them interact was so good, and I only wish we can get more of that soon. And as far as the progression of the story goes, it's actually nice. It doesn't feel like it's taking forever like most series do. We actually get to see character development with Togo himself. Now he's getting all of these conflicting feelings in his head and what he thinks is right and what he has to do as a student and as a member of the student council. And so we're seeing this change in him that is very apparent, and then just the relationship between him and Poemo throughout the chapters just feels so natural. And this is also one of those series where, don't worry guys, we're going to see them be in a relationship because they eventually get together. And from that point forward, we get to see how they are as a couple, which a lot of it's nice. A lot of it has a bunch of arguments of kind of simple stuff, but things that are important. And it's just kind of great to see rom-coms are now finally doing that these days. Because if you go back in the day, early 2000s, 90s, wherever you started with your rom-com journey, it wasn't until the end of the series they finally got together. And it's like, I mean, one aspect is, sure, we don't really need to see it in those series because they've already gone through everything, essentially. Like Nisekoi, perfect example. Love Hina is another one. But, I mean, I guess that's also a little different since it's a harem and they have to put a huge emphasis on whenever the main character and the woman he's going to end up with, like, we have to do things. But still, same idea is that, like, yeah, we had to wait forever for something to happen. Here, it's like, no, let's do it around halfway in from where we currently are. And that's good. Now, my only downside to reading this, and it's actually factors into a bunch of other series too, is that it's a slice of life weekly shonen series. What does that mean? It's gonna keep going, and it's just gonna become generic at a certain point. That's the main reason why I'm not caught up to chapter 63, because when I was reading it's like, oh no, now we're just following into the normal line. The thing that made this series so unique and kind of stand out in the beginning is slowly fading away, and now we're just gonna be like the rest of this stuff. Yeah, honestly, if it ended soon, I wouldn't mind. Where I left off, they just started another year of high school. We have to go through all of second year, and then we're gonna have to go through all of the third year, and then they graduate, and then hopefully it ends there. And it's like, oh man, that's gonna be a long time. I don't know if I want to keep reading a series like that if it's just gonna become more generic. Main reason I stopped reading Komi-san, there's so many slice of life series. You really have to do something like this where it's like, oh, very different. It has a lot of energy. I'm liking the characters. Let's keep that pace going. Because now we're exploring a bunch of other characters. We're taking the main characters, Poemo, Togo, back a bit so that way we could focus on some people like the president, vice president, because they're seniors. They're going to be leaving. So it's like, okay, now we have to finish their little side story that was kind of teased here and there. That is fun, and I did like how that ends. But then as soon as we start the next thing, it's like, okay, now we're just back into the generic mold that is slice of life. And that's just kind of disappointing. If this is your main shtick and you like that sort of just generic slice of life writing that we get in most series, this is totally up your alley. Would definitely recommend. Because I did have a good time reading this. It's just now that like I stopped for a bit, came back and looked, and I was like, oh yeah. And if I wasn't reading as many slice of life as I am now, then I probably wouldn't make it a big deal. But because I see it so many times, every time it pops up on a new series, I can't help but think, oh great, here we go again. Another fun series I had now that's just going to be almost a mindless read. To bring up Komi-san again, I think I'm around 100 chapters behind. And honestly, the last time I asked one of my friends, how is it? It doesn't sound enticing. That just kind of sucks, Well, but also Komi has its own problems with too many characters as well. So that's a little different, but still, like, the main point is I don't want to see something drag like that. But overall, guys, I mean, aside from my complaints, again, yeah, if that's your stick, definitely check it out. You know, aside from my complaints of it becoming more generic towards the current chapters, it's still a fun read through and through. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. You could send us an email, unversepodcast@gmail.com, as well as any other questions or comments, and we'll bring those up on regular episodes as well. So thanks for listening, guys, and we will catch you on the next episode.